offence archaeology on Twitter. Quite terrifying.
Don't beg Jeff Bezos. Charge him, for God's sake.
Have a day off. Use some common sense.
People can say whatever they want.
Mid-morning talk.
Sunday Talk.
Talk Radio.
Take a chance with the Tice Man.
Talk Radio. Richard Tice.
Sunday morning devotion, there isn't a sermon.
Talk Radio's Common Sense Weekend.
Richard Tice.
On Talk Radio.
Welcome back to Tice Talk. We are already flying into the second hour. Lots of tweets and calls coming in. One tweet here, just to clarify. Can I get my facts straight? It's not the police who decide on whether someone gets charged or not. It's the DPP who decide that. The police are failing to investigate crimes in a proper manner. That's from Jan. Well, that's right. But the point is, if the police do a good job and present more criminals with the evidence to the DPP, then actually that would result in a higher charge rate. That is the point that I'm trying to get to. Happy to clarify that. We now need to talk about another big, important issue, which many people don't seem to want to talk about that. And look, many of us up and down the country, millions, enjoy football, enjoy sporting events, but there have been concerns about the number of people, the number of footballers, for example, who are experiencing chest pains, collapsing with them, and wanting to know why. And those of you who listen to my Sunday show will know that a few weeks back I had the former international England footballer Matt Letizia on this. He couldn't recall when there were so many players struggling with chest pains, cardiac issues when he was a player. I then had Professor Sanjay Sharma, a sports cardiologist that advises Premier League clubs on to talk about this issue. And I'm delighted now to be joined by Dr. Aseem Malhotra, who's a consultant cardiologist and also a campaigner with the BMJ and medical colleges to reduce harms from taking too much medicine, because clearly that is such an important issue. And we have got to be brave enough, courageous enough to talk about this issue and to understand what may or may not be going on and what level of research is going on. Aseem, very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. So, look, I know you've been aware of this issue, and as a very experienced cardiologist, clearly it's sort of at the heart of your expertise. Where are you on this issue? We've got we've got more and more footballers who are struggling, and we had a situation this week where the Sunderland manager expressed his concerns about whether it was COVID or the vaccine that may be causing additional issues. And he was sort of asking the question. And I think it's right to ask the question, isn't it?
Richard, absolutely. I think I've been observing this. I've never seen anything over my lifetime, my career, where there's been certainly the media highlighting so many footballers or athletes collapsing, together with also many people in the crowd. Football matches being stopped because people in the crowd are suffering severe illnesses. Some of them having cardiac arrests. I understand. I think sadly somebody died yesterday in one of the in the football league in one of the matches that occurred yesterday. So this is really concerning. The question is what's going on and why is it happening? And that I think needs investigating. I think obviously people are going to ask the question, has this got anything to do with the vaccine rollout, the Pfizer vaccine rollout? And I think we need to tackle this head on. The answer is we really don't know. It could be COVID. It could be related to the vaccine. I think one thing I can share with you and talk about, Richard, is it really highlights an area of discussing in a more transparent way, actually, what is the risk of COVID in younger, healthy people, and what are the benefits of the vaccines, and what are the potential harms? And as a cardiologist, I can definitely talk about that in relation to the Pfizer vaccine. So if we look at people who are younger, I think people know generally that younger people are less likely to suffer serious illness and death from COVID. Just to give you some perspective, if you're aged between, say, 30 and 40, your risk of dying from COVID is about 1 in 3,000 if you test positive. And that, by the way, is from Delta. We know that with Omicron, the risk is even lower, okay? If you're aged between 20 and 30, that risk becomes about 1 in 7,000, again with Delta. And in sort of the 0 to 28 year group, and this is very relevant to what I'm about to tell you, that risk is even smaller, about 1 in 40,000. Now, there has been a lot of recent research and publications that have been able to try and make the link between the Pfizer vaccine and a condition called myocarditis, which is inflammation of the heart muscle. Something I've managed in my career in many patients, and it can be quite severe. Traditional viral myocarditis can kill a substantial proportion of people. I've managed patients who have needed heart transplants because of myocarditis who are young. My own brother, when I was aged 11, my 13-year-old brother died very quickly after getting a viral infection, which ultimately concluded to be myocarditis. So this can be quite a serious condition.
And this, to be clear, Asim, this was the concern of the Sunderland manager regarding his goalkeeper, who I think has got a degree of heart inflammation, myocarditis, and therefore has been told actually he's got to rest for many weeks.
Yeah, and he's attributed it, as far as I'm aware, Richard, from what I've been reading, he has personally attributed this to the vaccine, hasn't he?
I'm not actually clear on that. I think the manager was questioning whether it was COVID, and there have been people who suggest that actually that it's the virus itself as opposed to anything else. And in a sense, that's the question that needs the research, isn't it?
I'm glad you asked that question. We already have some answers on that. So recent publication in Nature revealed that if you're under 40, the risk of myocarditis from the vaccine is higher than the risk of myocarditis from COVID. That's only part of the story. If you look at 12 to 17-year-olds, Hong Kong research published revealed that about 1 in 2,700 males aged between 12 and 17 suffered myocarditis. Now, it is different when you get myocarditis from the vaccine versus viral myocarditis. In general, viral vaccine myocarditis is relatively mild in the sense it doesn't tend to result in immediate death. But what we do know is when you do MRI scans on most of these people with vaccine-related myocarditis, they will have a degree of myocardial scar, a little bit of a scarring of the heart muscle, which is really not something you want. And although most of them get discharged from hospital and have what we call good heart function, they are now left with what we don't know is going to be a potential risk for them moving forward. So this is a concern.
And Asim, just on this, is it possible? We obviously sort of see it because it's in front of our eyes on TV screens with footballers. We hear about it with other elite sports people. Is there a possible link between high levels of fitness and exertion, and then an issue with the heart, either from COVID or the vaccine?
Yeah, I mean, to some degree, yes. But usually in athletes, I mean, they get screened. Healthy people don't tend to have this sort of major issue that we're seeing right now. So I think personally, I don't think we can at the moment make any strong links between the vaccine and what's happening in footballers. But we do have data to suggest that really if you're a healthy person under 40, and from everything I've analysed, looking at the data critically over a number of months, speaking to eminent vaccine developers, immunologists, scientists in Oxford and Stanford, for me it's quite clear that if you're under 40 and healthy, there is no clear indication, and this is important, Richard, because I think we're going to have more discussion on this. There's no clear indication for people to have the vaccine, and the reason is this. It's very clear now that the vaccine doesn't prevent transmission, and therefore it should be treated more like a drug. Now, one of the things I campaign on is about ethical, transparent, evidence-based medical practice, which at the heart of which is informed consent. Now, what most people, again, don't know, and it's important to clarify this now, again, and this is for people to make their own decisions, but it's just a starting point. If you look at Pfizer's original trial, which is the highest quality level of evidence we have in terms of looking at what the benefit of the vaccine is in preventing infection, because that's what it showed, was only prevention of symptomatic infection. You had to vaccinate 119 people to prevent one person getting symptomatic COVID.
And so
that's been missing from the conversation, and this is crucial to informed consent. Now, where we're going from here is basically, knowing what we know now, and also Omicron, by the way, is much milder. And in fact, the suggestion the vaccine doesn't even prevent infection from Omicron. It may prevent serious illness and death, and that, I'm sure, is probably more specific to older, vulnerable people. It's very clear now, in my mind, Richard, and I want anyone to challenge me on this, JCVI, anybody else, there is absolutely no justification whatsoever for mandating the vaccine. It should be.
That is. I'm absolutely clear on that, and I think it's appalling. For example, utterly appalling that they're still talking about mandating vaccines for NHS staff. And I think my real concern is the extent to which, Asim, the level of research is going on in particular areas. So I actually wrote to the Football Association after my interview with Professor Sharma, just asking them what research are they doing as the governing body and possibly linking up with other international sporting bodies, because surely it can't be that difficult to try and establish those who are experiencing cardiac chest pains or collapsing. And as I said to the FA, surely we need to know, and you can see whether there's any trend developing, whether or not they've had COVID and not had the vaccine, had COVID and had the vaccine, whether they've not had COVID and had the vaccine, or whether they've not had COVID and not had the vaccine and it's just a completely unrelated issue. I mean, it can't be beyond the wit of man to find this out.
Richard, it's not rocket science, and your questions are absolutely very pertinent. That's what needs answering, so we can dispel, get to the truth. And unfortunately, because of these stories, and I can tell you now, some of those footballers that have collapsed, I know from inside knowledge that some of them hadn't had the vaccine. So what this will do is it fuels actual real anti-vaxxers. So we don't want that, because that erodes trust.
And that's what I said in my letter that I'm going to publish after the show on Twitter to the FA. I sent it to them on the 11th of January. I must confess, I'm slightly disappointed that they haven't even had the courtesy to acknowledge receipt of the letter, let alone reply to it, let alone come on the show to help us understand what research they are doing. I'm sure they are doing some.
Yeah, I think one of the problems, Richard, just to finish, I think what all of this should highlight is actually, let's just get back to the basics. Informed consent. Do players, do athletes know what their individual risk is? Are they actually told that their benefit of the vaccine is only in prevention of, very small percent in terms of prevention of infection? Fine, they still want to take the vaccine. Are they being told that it's very clear it doesn't stop transmission? So in my view, I can't see any justification for any healthy athlete under 40 taking this vaccine. Now, the other thing I must add in, given what we know about what's going on with the mandates, which you have rightly said is just appalling what's happening there. It was Martin Luther King that said, it is a moral responsibility for every citizen to disobey unjust laws. As far as this vaccine mandate is concerned for NHS staff, it isn't just unjust, it's unethical, and it's unscientific, and this needs to be resolved very, very quickly.
Well,
otherwise,
hopefully
you're going to have huge problems with trust in public health.
Well, I did read
for many, many years. The
only good news there, Asim, is I did read actually in one of the papers this morning that I believe that the NHS England, that they wouldn't essentially hospitals that would suffer dramatic understaffing if they had high levels of unvaccinated staff, then actually they wouldn't have to ask them to leave. So I do think there may be some shift going on there.
It does put chief executives in a very difficult position because they're having to battle with the law and then versus what the
absolutely right. Asim, thank you so much for your thoughts there on the issue of myocarditis, of COVID, of elite sports people. And we have to be courageous enough and brave enough to ask what research is going on. We want research to go on so that we can understand more, because that's how we make progress, it's how we learn, and it's how we reduce ill-informed, misinformed speculation in the absence of any other information. And that's why I want the FA to come on this show and to tell us what research they're doing, what research they're aware other sporting bodies are doing, because this issue really is important. Stay with us. It's Tice Talk. It's Talk Radio.
Bold Talk Radio.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.
The world headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio. Offence archaeology on Twitter. Quite terrifying.
Don't beg Jeff Bezos. Charge him, for God's sake.
Have a day off. Use some common sense.
People can say whatever they want.
Talk Radio.
They can take away your opinion. They can't take away your freedom of speech.
100% more beat.
Smart people, smart thinking.
We say what you think.
Talk Radio, the home of common sense.
The home of common sense indeed. Welcome back to Tice Talk. It's 20 past 11. We're well into the second hour, and that was a fascinating discussion with Dr. Aseem Malhotra, a consultant cardiologist, someone who really knows what he's talking about. And it is right to talk about this. It is right to ask the authorities, the sporting bodies, such as the FA, what research they're doing so that actually we can reduce misinformation, we can learn and gain more information, more understanding, and that creates more confidence in what's going on, what we're being asked to do. And I think that's really important. Meanwhile, keep those tweets coming in. Chris, he says, how can it be greener to use Russian gas? Using our own will have massive financial benefits. What about the oil off Scotland? Good point. We need that just as much. We could be practically self-sufficient. Chris, I think we can be totally self-sufficient, and that's what I want, total self-reliance, whilst researching greener methods of power like nuclear. Absolutely right. That's what you do. You have a diverse range of energy sources. You invest in new technologies. You should always be doing that. But actually, let's use our own treasure, our own gas, our own oil, rather than sending our money elsewhere. Meanwhile, Ian, on the subject of police, he says maybe we should have less rainbow police cars and rainbow police officers would be a good move. There's no lack of either numbers and money to push certain agendas. I think you may be right there. And Glasgow Guy says a fantastic discussion with Dr. Aseem Malhotra. Well, let's go now to our caller, Mark, from Birmingham. A very good morning, Mark. What's on your mind?
Morning, Richard. Slightly digressing with the subject, but
keep it coming on. Just tell us how you're feeling, whether you're happy or wound up.
National insurance rise, mate. Basically, what it is, we're being told it's 1.25%, but Martin Lewis is actually reporting it is, in actual fact, 10%. So it's little things like that.
Yes. So that's an interesting.
Get the whole country confused.
Indeed. So just to be clear, I think I've got my understanding right. It's 1.25% increase, but that's not only that does that affect the employee, but also that affects the employer. And what Martin Lewis is saying, I think, my understanding, is he's saying that represents a 10% increase on what is currently being paid.
Yeah,
that's the point. So it's not an increase of 10%. It's an increase of 10% on what is currently being paid. So it's going from, I think, 12.5% to what would then be, I think, 13.75. I may have got those maths slightly wrong. Someone will no doubt correct me. But it's of that order.
Yeah. It's just it's the way that things are put across sometimes makes a lot of people that they don't understand and they question what's going on. I think we need a lot. We need a lot of clarity because we've got a choice. We've got a Conservative government that is obviously raising prices for everyone, and then we got a Labour Party that may or may not get in that are talking about raising our savings account. So any money that we did have that hasn't been taken by utility prices, national insurance rises, and we might have in our savings, Labour will grab. So. Everyone sort of
the truth is they're both trying to grab it. I mean, just today, and I'm going to be talking about this in the third hour with John Redwood, the Conservative MP, because there's a battle royal, Mark, going on in the Conservative Party, because some are saying actually that they should reverse this tax rise. Boris and Rishi have written a joint article in today's Sunday Times saying no, they're definitely going to go ahead with it, no ifs, no buts. I think they are being completely tin-eared. And it's interesting how Boris thinks that he can try and save his bacon. Supposedly last week and the week before, I think he was listening to various Tory MPs who were concerned, and one of their concerns was the tax rises. But he's sort of doubling down, which is extraordinary to me. And my view is actually the government's balance sheet and finances, they are actually perfectly capable of taking the strain. They should be cutting taxes to create faster growth, not raising taxes, because all we know, evidence around the world and here in the UK shows, if you raise taxes, then you will get lower growth because a civil servant will spend that money worse and get less value and less productivity than an individual or a small
Absolutely.
business owner. And
Yeah,
that's the point.
yeah.
And what most people forget, lots of people panic, we've got to repay the debt from the COVID era. Look, folks, between the two world wars for 30 years, we had debt in this country over 50% higher than current levels.
Yeah.
And when we created growth after the Second World War, actually the debt level came down.
I think the whole country's fed up. They don't know who to vote for. It's gone out of the frying pan into the fire, Richard.
Well, we'll have to see what happens at the next election in the run-up to it. Mark, very good to talk to you. Thanks for calling. That was Mark from Birmingham. Meanwhile, back down to London, Dave. Hi there. Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, tremendous. What's on your mind on this lovely day?
Yeah, another maths question for you, really.
Oh dear, steady on, maths.
This 6% you talk about in terms of crimes charged. I don't care if it's 6% or 3% or 2%. As long as it's a high proportion of the violent crimes, knife crimes, so as long as that at 90%, I couldn't care less about the rest, and here's why. You've got different crimes going on now. So Kelly J was on this week talking about the lady in Newport Gwent who has been a warrant issued, and the police went round to search her house to see if she'd got any stickers for Stand Up for Women. So I don't care if 0% of those crimes are charged. I do care the police are spending their time on them, but that's all I'm saying, that 6% is not the issue. They should break it down by the types of crime and the types of percentage.
No, it's a very good point, Dave. I think actually they do to a degree. I just haven't got them in front of me. And you're absolutely right. We'd like to think that of violent crimes and things like rapes and murders. Frankly, I'd want them to get 100%, and maybe that's a bit ambitious. But equally, things like robberies and burglaries and assault. I want those solved as well. Surely, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. But we need to know what the percentage of those are.
Yes.
They might be at 30 or 40 or 50%. But because people now are reporting anything and everything as a non-crime hate crime, A, I don't want the police spending their time on it, and B, I don't want them going around charging people, because that then wastes even more time and resource.
It's a very valid point, Dave, and I fear that one of the reasons they do that is that it's probably a bit easier to go after basically a law-abiding citizen with something pretty soft and unnecessary, and therefore it's easier to get the stats up. Or am I being a bit naive there?
No, I don't think that's the reason. I think that they're in do it or don't do it, because what's happening is you've got probably 20 or 30 extreme transgender type people that probably report 27 crimes each per day, wandering around looking for crime, and the police have no choice. Once that is reported, they've got no choice because it's now logged, and they've got to do something. So I think you'll find we should understand who is reporting all of these crimes. Who reported the woman in Newport Gwent and why? And why are they wasting police time?
That's a very good point.
Call them out for it.
I think that's a very good point, actually. We should call out people that are wasting police time. Dave, thank you very much for your thoughts. That's Dave in London. He wants to see a greater breakdown of the percentages of violent crimes, serious crimes, that result in a charge. Let's see if we can try and find that, because that is really important. Meanwhile, we've got some great tweets coming in. There are some concerns, I think, about YouTube. We may be having one or two challenges with YouTube. We're trying to sort that out. And then Angela in Vauxhall, she has just tweeted in, thank you for having Dr. Asim Mehrotra on your show. She's a huge supporter. He promotes discussion and the truth on a number of subjects, which is important. Meanwhile, Tina has said, this is a bit weird, Talk Radio, we've just had an advert in Welsh, which is a beautiful language and sounds lovely, but she's no idea what the DVLA was trying to tell me. I don't know if we're doing Welsh adverts or whether that was just down in Wales, but there we are. Anyway, coming up, we're going to be talking to another great start-up entrepreneurial British business that's making electric car batteries here in the UK. Stay with us. It's Tice Talk on Talk Radio.
Bold Talk Radio.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.
The world headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.
Offence archaeology on Twitter. Quite terrifying.
Don't beg Jeff Bezos. Charge him, for God's sake.
Have a day off. Use some common sense.
People can say whatever they want.
Richard Tice on Talk Radio.
A first magnitude star of common sense.
The Tice Man.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.
Richard Tice.
Talk Radio.
Welcome back to Tice Talk here on this lovely day. We're well into the second hour of my show, and I think people enjoyed that interview at the top of the hour with Dr. Aseem Malhotra. One or two people are just asking for clarity as to who he was, what his name is. You can follow him on Twitter. He is a great guy, really, really knowledgeable and experienced. Dr. Aseem Malhotra. Well, now we need to move on to another subject which is very dear to my heart, which is great entrepreneurial British companies, startups, young companies, growing companies with good ideas, ambitious thoughts, new technologies, trying things and raising money to do so. In particular, if they're going to create lots of jobs in new technology. Also, if they're doing it in some of the regions, some of the areas that often, far too often, were left behind. And that is part of that sort of very easy expression, levelling up. And a couple of weeks ago, I was delighted to interview the chief executive of a Cornish mining company, British Lithium. And of course, lithium is needed in electric car batteries. So it seems appropriate to now speak to the executive chairman of British Volt, who is an exciting British company with huge plans, big plans, to build electric car batteries at a gigafactory in Northumberland. And Peter, a very good morning to you. Peter Rolton, executive chairman of British Volt.
How long are you going to be?
Hopefully we've got you. And it's you know, you've obviously raised quite a lot of money to invest in creating this new factory. Tell us a bit about it and the timing and the number of batteries that you think you may be able to create. Have we got you there, Peter? We may have lost Peter. We may have lost Peter Rolton, who's the executive chairman of this company, British Volt, who've got big plans to develop a huge gigafactory. There's a number of these factories that are going to be hopefully planned in the UK, because clearly if we're moving towards many, many more electric cars, which is the plan as part of our plans to reduce emissions, then we need lots of electric batteries. And I want them made here. I don't want them to be made in China. And it feels to me very sustainable that if we can use British lithium in the creation of electric car batteries that are built and manufactured here in the UK using British jobs, then that is a fantastic virtuous circle of creating jobs, keeping our money here, adding value, and then using those batteries into the latest electric cars. So I think we've got Peter back on the line. Peter, a very good morning to you. Hopefully you're with us and can hear us. And I was just keen to get a sense from you, Peter, as what the progress is. You've been raising some money. What's the timing and the ambitions for British Volt in terms of number of batteries and things?
Okay, so British Volt's building the UK's first what we call large-scale gigafactory up at Camas in the northeast of England. Final outputs, when we get all 4 phases up and running, will be 45 gigawatt hours by about 2027, 2028. First phase, though, completes Q2 2024. Those will be our first production batteries out the door to customers.
And that's 2024. That's fantastic. Oh, so what sort of numbers do you start with, and how quickly does that ramp up, Peter?
Well, it ramps up, I say 45 gigawatt hours is the final after 4 phases. We'll probably do about 4 or 5 on the first phase with the first production line. Those will be standard 21700 cells to customers, go into sort of existing portfolios of vehicles that are out there at the moment. I mean, the number of cells actually runs into the millions if you actually do the maths. They come off the end of the production line at a very, very, very high speed when we actually start making them.
And what sort of number of jobs within the next sort of 5 years are you looking to create up in Northumberland?
So the factory itself, we think will use around 3,000 full-time skilled, semi-skilled jobs spread over shifts. It'll be a continuous manufacturing operation. But also what we're very keen to do is we're working with the local authority and the UK government to develop supplier park as well on adjacent land. As is normal in situations, you want your supply chain to be as close as possible to you. We're looking to have a fully vertically integrated supply chain for all the principal components, and to develop that at the scale that will service not just ourselves as a manufacturer, but also the whole sort of UK ecosystem for battery manufacture going forward for gigafactories. So some of the people we're talking to about co-locating, these will be European co-locations, not just UK ones.
Interesting. And would most of the batteries be then used in cars that are manufactured here in the UK, or would you be sort of exporting quite a few as well?
So it'll be a bit of both. I mean, basically, we're building inside the UK EU trade zone, the Brexit deal trade zone. So that means that our batteries can be moved around within Europe without any form of tariff and used in vehicles. So some will go UK, some will go into Europe. Some may even go to other jurisdictions completely. Not just cars, of course. There's other sectors here like electric e-mobility, public transport as well, going to be a big demand. And also like commercials. I mean, how many white vans are there running around the streets these days filled with packages? They all need to go electric. That's an area that's not had a lot of focus to date.
Interesting. And I had on a couple of weeks ago the boss of British Lithium down in Cornwall. Obvious question and a sort of hope. Will you be able to use lithium mined in Cornwall and possibly elsewhere in the UK for your batteries?
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I mean, there's 3 lithium startups we're aware of in the UK. There's Green Lithium in Scotland, there's Nordic Lithium in the Wear Valley, and then there's Cornish Lithium. Lithium is one of the most common minerals out there. The quantity we'll use, though, I suspect we'll probably suck all 3 of those dry, plus a bit. But we want a local supply chain, so we are talking to those.
That's great to hear. And what's the lifespan of the sort of batteries that you might be creating? And then at the end of that lifespan, what are the disposal plans to make sure we've got a complete sort of sustainable process?
Well, the typical sort of battery pack lasts about 8 to 10 years before you start to see what I would call meaningful sort of degradation in terms of its ability to withhold charge. But what needs to happen to them, either they need to then go into sort of static storage units on the grid and have a sort of a second life, or they come back and they get recycled. We want to be recycling as many batteries as possibly. Having a recycling capability is key to our actual development plans. We're talking to several partners at the moment about, developing best-in-class recycling. By 2030, it's estimated that something like 85% of the mineral needs can be met by, recycled batteries. We can't just go for an electric vehicle revolution by digging up another set of minerals out of the planet and using them all up. We've got to get it into a circular supply chain.
Yes, that's very interesting. I wasn't aware of that, and that does sound logical. So you could actually use it also as battery storage in the grid.
Yes, that's a second life for them, and then eventually they get to a point where they need to be recycled.
That's right. And I think you've had some, in terms of obviously the funding for this, you've obviously raised money from private investors, but also it was announced before Christmas that you had secured some funding or investment, I think in principle, from the government through their automotive fund. Is that right?
Yes, the Automotive Transformation Fund, which is a BAYS fund, this is aimed at helping businesses, get going and also enacting the transformation across from, internal combustion to electric e-mobility. We were an applicant for that. We've been successful. We announced week before last that the government had awarded us £100 million grant, okay? But what that really does, £100 million is a huge sum of money, let's be very clear.
Yes.
But our factory is going to cost somewhere around 3.84 billion, okay, to build. So there's a lot of other money to raise as well. But what the government money does is, because of the levels of due diligence you go through with BAYS, because it's public money, quite rightly, they look at your business plan in a great deal of detail. It means the capital markets will now come in and support us very, very strongly because of that. That signalling to the markets is key to it.
And sort of talking on behalf of taxpayer, obviously, I'm a great fan of free markets and British businesses growing and being successful. Does the government, you talk about a grant, how does that work? Is it a loan with a rate of interest, or does the government, on behalf of the taxpayer, get an equity stake for helping stimulate? How does that work?
No, it's a straightforward, non-repayable grant. It's not a loan. It's there to help us make a difference, and it's there to signal to the capital markets that this is an investable business that UK government backs as a piece of strategic infrastructure. If we don't get battery manufacturing going, in the UK, it puts the whole UK automotive industry at jeopardy, because you need to have them after 26, 27, under the Brexit deal. You've got this thing called rules of origin coming in, which means were you to start bringing all the batteries in still from Asia and China, it moves the vehicle as having been made outside the trade zone, and then the 10% tariff on the whole vehicle going out of the car factory. So this is not something we can choose to do or not do as UK PLC. UK PLC needs a battery industry.
Well, absolutely, and I think it's part of creating proper self-reliance, proper sustainability. If we've got the raw materials like lithium here, and we want to keep the money and jobs here and create the added value, not only for our own cars, but also then, as you say, Peter, to be able to export them.
Yeah, jobs is absolutely key. And we're developing this factory in the northeast of England, in Camas and Blythe. They're two parts of the UK that have suffered most with deindustrialisation, loss of traditional fossil fuel industries with power stations, mining and shipbuilding. This is the next green revolution. So in placing this factory there, we're very, very keen that what we do is we kickstart, whole new careers and a whole new industry within that area. And we've committed within the planning permission that we've got from the Northumberland County Council to give an absolute commitment and priority to local jobs and training.
That's fantastic, Peter. Thank you so much for that information. And already I've got tweets coming in enjoying this conversation. Peter, thank you very much for sharing that with us. That's Peter Rolton, the Executive Chairman of British Volt, a new British company that's raising money in order to create a huge gigafactory for electric car batteries located up in Northumberland. We'll keep a close eye on that. Lots of potential jobs and the ability to use British raw materials as well. I think that sounds really interesting. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Keep the tweets coming in. Don't go anywhere. It's Tice Talk on Talk Radio.
Bold Talk. Talk Radio.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.
The world headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.
Offence archaeology on Twitter. Quite terrifying.
Don't beg Jeff Bezos. Charge him, for God's sake.
Have a day off. Use some common sense.
People can say whatever they want.
Talk Radio. A new lineup for a new generation.
Essential, edgy, engaging.
Advanced postulation for any angry nation.
Ask for it by name.
Talk Radio.
The home of common sense.
Welcome back to Tice Talk. We're approaching the end of the second hour, and wasn't that a great conversation with Peter Rolton, the Executive Chairman of British Volt? And I think, you know, that good news, that inspiring news, great British companies raising money, creating jobs at the absolute sharp end of new technology. And we've got a tweet came in here from Charlotte who said lithium is also really important for people with bipolar, other mental illnesses, not just batteries, so really important to us. That was relating to the discussion about British Lithium and the Cornish Lithium Company mining or potentially mining lithium in Cornwall, which is great news. Thank you for that, Charlotte. We've got some calls coming in. Mike, I think, is in Alicante. Is that right, Mike?
That's right, Richard.
Fantastic. You see, we've gone global, big time.
Yeah, if it's possible, I'd like to cure 80 years old, and if it's possible, I'd like to cure the energy problem and the migrant problem, if you let me.
Well, let's try. You've got to be on your best form, Mike. Go for it.
Okay, regarding we're sitting on tons of fracking, we're sitting on tons and tons of coal, which we're not using. China has just built the biggest coal-fired power station. Why can't we do the same? And also to put in strategically a couple of nuclear power stations, that will cure that situation. And of course, let's go for the fracking, which will make everything so much cheaper and good for this country.
That's the key point. Did you hear my Sunday's sermon at the beginning? I mean,
I did.
You know, and the point is,
I totally agree with you.
And it's important to distinguish between the two things. The treasure is the gas, the shale gas. It's then how you extract it, and fracking is used elsewhere in the world. some people have concerns about the process. My point is that you've got to try things and you've got to keep looking at new technologies because technology always evolves. And if there's something better than fracking, and it may well be, from what I'm hearing and learning and meeting people, that there might be new technologies that reduce some of those concerns, then we should be using that as well and trying it.
Well, we can do the same thing with the coal fire. We can filter out with new technology anything coming out and anything going in. So we can do that with new technology.
And there's no question that, obviously there is a huge move away from coal and historically, obviously, that was very dirty. But with new technologies, for example, as I understand, the potential new coal mine in Cumbria that is causing a lot of controversy, they are talking about much cleaner ways to extract it, as opposed to dirty coal being extracted elsewhere in the world that we're then still importing. It seems madness to me.
Well, if we're worried about the clean air, China doesn't seem to be bothered about it. They've got the biggest coal-fired power station.
The point is, Mike, we need to be self-reliant. That's the point on our energy, and therefore we can keep the prices down. And on that basis, if we keep the prices down, it's the least well-off who benefit the most. And I just think that is critical.
Exactly what I was thinking. Can I quickly mention the migrant crisis?
Go for it. 1 minute.
We had them. They was going to block our ports, and you're never going to stop the migrant crisis by bringing the army. The only way I think to stop this is to say to the French, we'll take back the 18, which we very easily gave away licences, and we say to the French that every 1,000 that turn up on British soil, we will take back another existing licence.
You're talking about the fishing licences, so you're looking to negotiate between the two. I hear what you say, Mike. I'm not sure. I think we've got to stop the whole business model and do what Australia did, and the only way this stops is when we have a government that is brave enough to say we're going to safely pick people up from the dinghies and we're going to take them back to Calais, take them back to Dunkirk, and that's the only point at which people realise the business model doesn't work. Mike from Alicante, keep listening.
We've got to get your party in then.
Well, Mike, we're going to battle on. Keep listening. Thanks for the call. We've got to move back to the UK, where in Hereford, I think I've got Heather on the line. Heather, good morning.
Hello, good morning. Can I firstly say, don't take them back to Calais, take them back where they originally came from.
Well,
just send them home.
Well, that's the starting point in order to stop the business model has to be to return them to France. But then you're absolutely right, of course. The point is that what's happening at the moment is the illegal migrants are coming here and they're staying here and no one's being returned. We can't even deport, Heather, criminals, foreign criminals who've come out of prison. We can't deport them.
I suggested, about 2.5 years ago, you stick a ship in the channel so that I said, don't let them set foot on English soil.
But I think the problem, the issue with that, and it's an understandable thing to say, but the reality is that when they're sending when essentially hundreds and hundreds are coming over every single day, within 2 or 3 days, that ship is going to be full, and then you need another one and another one.
Well, maybe you do, but if you can send them around the world, then, you've got to do something. You've got to stand up and make a start. It's no good just letting the problems get bigger and larger.
We absolutely have got to do something because...
But I rang to say what a great person this Peter, was it Rolton from...
yes, that's right, Peter Rolton from British Volt.
We need more people running companies that way. I wanted to say that what upsets me so much is all these monies that get creamed off at the top in high salaries, such as Network Rail. They don't run the railway properly. They're not accountable. Nobody says, where have you been all the week and what have you done? What's your contribution? You can't just sit around pretending to run something and go in a boardroom once a year. That's not right.
Well, it is extraordinary, Heather. I mean, I was talking with Mike Graham about that on Friday, and to be honest, frankly, most of us should apply to be a director of some parts of the railways because the salaries seem completely through the roof. Couldn't quite believe it.
Well, I speak to the staff at the railway station and I say, why is this and why is that? And they said, oh, well, we've asked and we've tried and we're sick of asking. And it's, if Network Rail would, allow us to do this, I said, well, why can't they? Oh, well, you can't. I mean, try and get in touch with them. I mean, does the government doing? And where is this money going? And, we have...
We absolutely know, Heather, that the quantity of waste in government is legendary. In the third hour, I'm just going to be talking about some of the waste and why actually a government minister had the courage and the integrity to resign at the dispatch box of the House of Lords over government waste and fraud elsewhere. It's all over the place, Heather, and it's not good enough, is it?
Tackle wastage, don't forget that. I mean, I'm not wasteful with 1 penny of my money, not unless, I try to do the very best I can, always have done, and I was kind of brought up like that in a way, but, not to be mean or anything, but just sensible, and we don't have that with, we're not taught that anymore.
People are much better at spending their own money on their behalf than civil servants are at spending other people's money. In other words, your money and my money and all our listeners' money. There we go. Heather, thank you so much.
One tiny little voice, and I have to...
No, but Heather, we really appreciate your thoughts, your voice, which is really important. That is Heather from Hereford. She's concerned about government waste, about huge salaries. And I don't mind if someone is brilliant and delivers huge value, creates a much better public service, then yes, pay them well. But maybe they need some proper performance-related pay. I mean, the boss of HS2 getting over 600 grand when the budget goes up and up and up, and the time frame seems to be extended and extended and extended. Not to forget the 20 billion quid that's been tunnelled under London for Crossrail, and it still hasn't opened 3 years later. Meanwhile, tweets are coming in thick and fast. We've got Jack here says, what's the betting the Greens will discover some problem with the mining of lithium? It's a fair question, Jack. But actually what the boss of British Lithium said is, of course, in Cornwall, they've got a long history of mining, and actually they welcome it to create jobs and value and regeneration. So hopefully that will be okay. Then we've got another one here. Steve, he says, great, the batteries could be made here, but what about the other raw materials that it seems China owns most of? I think Steve's referring to the Belt and Road Initiative. It's a fair point, Steve, but at least we have got some here, and whatever raw materials we've got here, in order to be more sustainable, we should be using our own raw materials. That keeps jobs and money here in the UK. Stay with us. We've got lots to talk about in the third hour. In particular, straight after the break, we're going to be talking about Ukraine. What's going on? We've got some great guests. It's Tice Talk on Talk Radio.
Bold Talk. Talk Radio.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.
The world headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.
Offence archaeology on Twitter. Quite terrifying.
Don't beg Jeff Bezos. Charge him, for God's sake.
Have a day off. Use some common sense.
People can say whatever they want.
Talk.
Sunday Talk.
Talk Radio. Richard Tice.
Powered by Debate.
Sunday morning with the Tice Man. Richard Tice. The heart of a common sense Sunday.
Richard Tice.
Talk Radio.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Tice Talk. We're in the third hour of what's been a busy show, talking about a range of domestic issues, from shale gas to policing, and also to a great new British company. But now we need to think about also some really important international issues that will have a significant domestic impact if Vladimir Putin decides to invade all or parts of Ukraine. And we need to talk about that. We need to understand what is the impact. And my real concern about this is that the impact on commodity prices, gas prices, energy prices here in the UK would be massive. They would rise even further from current levels, which we know are already painful and unsustainable. So therefore, actually, this is really significant. It's important to understand what's going on, and it's important to understand what our leaders are doing to try and persuade Putin that it would be a terrible idea, a really bad idea. And actually, credit where credit's due, I think that Liz Truss, and indeed to some extent the Prime Minister, they are working very hard, and they're talking the talk. The question is whether or not they're going to walk the walk and be able to persuade other people to come alongside them. I'm delighted to be joined now by the defence editor for the Evening Standard, Robert Fox. Good afternoon, Robert. Great to have you with us to talk about this really important issue. So clearly the situation's moving day by day. There's real concern Putin may invade this week or next week. What do you think's the latest, and how do you think he may be responding to the growing pressure from parts of the Western community?
I think, first of all, you're right that the timeline for actually taking military action is getting very tight. And there was a tiny clue to this in the last few days, in that they have been taking in blood stocks for transfusions to the frontline troops. Those stocks last for a very short time, days and weeks only. So we're looking at mid-late February outside for using the troops that he has got there. The talk is very interesting and very important because it looks to me as if he is reckoning, that is Putin, and it is all now entirely down to Putin, is looking for that for an out. But Richard, the most important thing is the people who are talking to him whom we're not hearing from at all, the Chinese. The Chinese are worried about two things. They don't want, first of all, the Winter Olympics to be